The moment she appeared on the alien planet, everything seemed quiet, almost too quiet. The sky was a strange shade of green, dotted with stars that moved in ways no human had ever seen before. The ground beneath her feet was rough and uneven, with rocks that shimmered faintly in the soft light. She took a careful step forward, her blonde hair catching the strange glow, and tried to make sense of where she was. Somehow, she had ended up far from Earth, in a world completely unknown, surrounded by creatures and technology that looked like they belonged to another era entirely. She had no fear, at least not the kind that made her freeze. Instead, she felt a strange mixture of curiosity and calm. She had always been brave, but this was different. She wasn't just facing the unknown. She was walking into a place where humans were not supposed to exist. Her presence had not gone unnoticed. From a distance, hidden behind crystalline walls and hovering platforms, the aliens watched her. Their eyes, sharp and precise, tracked every move she made. They were tall, with sleek, metallic-like skin that shimmered in the light, and eyes that glowed faintly in colors that humans couldn't easily recognize. They whispered among themselves in a language of clicks and tones, their voices carrying authority and curiosity at the same time. This planet had always been theirs, carefully organized and controlled. Every creature, every plant, and every element of the land had a purpose, and they took pride in the fact that they could manage it all. The most feared among these creatures was an ancient beast that roamed the wilderness freely, a creature so powerful that it had become a symbol of the aliens' dominance and control. Stories of it were told for generations, tales of its strength, its speed, and the fact that no one could ever tame it. The aliens assumed that everything on their planet could be understood and controlled. Until now, the girl walked with deliberate steps, observing the land. Small plants moved as if they were breathing, and the air carried scents that were entirely unfamiliar. Her senses were on high alert, but she did not panic. She had a knack for adapting, for reading situations quickly, and for noticing things that others overlooked. She noticed the tracks in the ground, first large, deep impressions, clearly from a massive creature. The soil around them was cracked, and some areas were scorched, as if something enormous had passed through with such force that it altered the land itself. Her curiosity pulled her closer to the tracks. She wanted to see the creature, to understand it. Humans were naturally drawn to the unknown, and she was no exception. She moved quietly, careful not to make sudden noises, aware that anything on this planet could be dangerous. Even though she didn't fully understand the alien world, she instinctively respected it. She could feel the eyes on her, the silent presence of beings who were both intelligent and cautious. Eventually, she reached a clearing where the tracks led. She stopped and looked around. The clearing was vast, filled with jagged rocks and patches of glowing moss. And then she saw it, the massive shape of the beast emerging from the shadows. Its scales shimmered like molten metal, its muscles rippled under its thick hide, and its eyes glowed with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. The air around it seemed to vibrate slightly, a low hum of power that made the ground beneath her tremble. Most humans would have turned and run, but she did not. She took a deep breath, letting herself focus on what she could control. She had always believed that fear was only as powerful as the mind allowed it to be. And so, instead of retreating, she took another step closer. The beast noticed her immediately. Its massive head lifted, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. Its eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. She felt its presence not as a threat, but as an awareness of something new, something different. The aliens watching from afar were stunned. No human had ever approached the beast before. They had built their entire understanding of life around the idea that the creature was untouchable, untamable, and unapproachable. Yet here was this small, seemingly fragile human moving closer with calm determination. Their whispers turned into urgent discussions, a mixture of disbelief and worry. "It will not survive," one of them said. Another shook its head, unable to understand how this human could even hope to face the creature without fear. The girl stopped a short distance away, her eyes never leaving the beast's. She did not make sudden movements. Instead, she lowered herself slightly, a gesture that seemed to show respect rather than aggression. The beast tilted its head, studying her. She reached out a hand slowly, just enough to signal that she meant no harm. And then something incredible happened. The beast didn't charge. It didn't roar. It didn't even growl. It simply observed, curious and attentive. She felt a strange connection in that moment, a silent understanding that went beyond words. She was not trying to dominate it or control it. She was acknowledging it, recognizing its power and its life. Humans were capable of empathy in ways that often surprised other species. And in that moment, she demonstrated it fully. She stayed still for what felt like hours, letting the creature sense her intentions, letting it decide for itself how to respond. The aliens continued to watch, their shock growing with each passing second. They had never seen a human interact with a creature in this way. Their society valued control and domination, the belief that intelligence meant power over others. Yet here was living proof that understanding and courage could achieve what strength alone could not. Some of them began to question everything they had believed, feeling an unfamiliar emotion that bordered on admiration. Others remained rigid, unable to process the idea that their rules and warnings might be incomplete or flawed. The girl finally stepped back slightly, just enough to give the beast space. She noticed a small scar on its leg, a reminder that even the mightiest were not invincible. She wanted to help, but she knew she needed to earn its trust first. The aliens, meanwhile, began to murmur to one another in disbelief. "It is impossible," one whispered. "No human can do this," said another. And yet it was happening. She was here, facing the beast, unafraid, and somehow connecting dot as the sun, or whatever passed for a sun on this planet, dipped lower, the shadows grew longer. The girl could feel the energy of the place, the weight of the alien presence, and the raw power of the beast. But she remained calm, focused, and steady. This was only the beginning. She knew that to truly understand the creature, she would need to spend more time, to show patience and courage beyond what anyone expected. And in doing so, she had already begun to change the aliens' perception of humans forever by the time night fell. She had not moved far from the clearing, but the bond she was forming with the beast and the planet itself was unmistakable. The aliens, despite their initial shock and disbelief, began to realize that this human girl was extraordinary in ways they could not yet understand. She was not just surviving in their world. She was thriving in it, and doing so with a grace and bravery that defied all expectations. It was a quiet moment, filled with anticipation, wonder, and tension. The girl had arrived in a world that was never meant for her, and yet she walked through it with confidence, curiosity, and a deep respect for life. The ancient beast, feared by generations, had acknowledged her presence, and the aliens, who prided themselves on their control, had no choice but to take notice. The events of this day would be remembered, told, and retold, as the moment when a human dared to face the impossible and change everything simply by being brave, compassionate, and unafraid. And so, under the strange green sky and the watchful eyes of the galaxy's most advanced beings, the story began not with fear, not with conflict, but with courage, curiosity, and the quiet power of one human girl standing before the greatest creature the planet had ever known. The girl did not sleep that night. Instead, she stayed near the clearing, her eyes fixed on the massive ancient beast as it moved slowly among the rocks. The creature had settled down, but it didn't completely relax. Its eyes still followed her every movement, watching her as closely as she watched it. The air was cool, carrying faint scents of the planet's unusual flora, but she hardly noticed. Her attention was entirely on the beast, and something inside her told her that tonight would be important. She took small steps closer, speaking softly in her own language, though she knew the beast would not understand the words. Still, there was a rhythm in her voice, a calm tone that seemed to carry meaning even without words. The creature shifted slightly, as if acknowledging her presence. Its breath came in slow, heavy gusts, the sound vibrating through the ground. Despite its immense size, she felt no threat, only the tension of power held in restraint. From a distance, the aliens continued to observe. They had gathered in a larger group, hovering above the clearing in their floating platforms. Some were whispering urgently among themselves, their voices a mix of confusion and astonishment. No one had ever come close to the beast without being attacked. Yet here was this human girl, small and fragile by their standards, standing near it without fear. "She is human," one alien said sharply. "It is impossible." "Yet it is happening," another replied. "We cannot understand her." The girl was aware of their presence, though she did not look at them directly. She had learned early in life that fear and intimidation rarely solved anything. Instead, she chose to remain calm, confident in her own understanding of life and creatures. Over the years, she had faced animals much larger and stronger than herself, and she had learned that patience, empathy, and respect often achieved what force could not. Slowly, she stepped closer to the beast again. Its scales glimmered under the planet's soft light, color shifting in ways no human eyes had ever seen. She reached out her hand, her fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from excitement and wonder. The creature lifted its massive head, eyes glowing brighter, and slowly leaned forward. It was testing her, gauging her intentions, and in that moment, she felt a connection she could not fully explain. The alien's whispers grew louder. "It responds to her," one said. "It should attack. It should defend itself. Why does it not?" "She is not trying to hurt it," another replied quietly. "Perhaps she is different." The girl's heart raced, but she remained steady. She crouched slightly, bringing herself closer to the ground, a gesture meant to show humility rather than dominance. The beast lowered its head as well, its massive eyes locking onto hers. She could feel the weight of its power, the raw strength contained within its muscles. Yet there was no aggression, only awareness. She reached out a hand slowly and touched one of its rough, metallic scales. The texture was unlike anything she had felt before, hard and unyielding, yet somehow alive. The beast flinched slightly at her touch, but it did not recoil or strike. She murmured softly, soothing words that she hoped carried meaning through tone alone. She had always believed that animals, no matter how powerful, could sense intention. And this creature, ancient and feared as it was, seemed to understand that her touch was not meant to harm. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the soft sounds of the planet at night and the occasional rumble of the beast shifting its massive body. She moved carefully along its side, examining its scars and signs of age. This was no mindless monster. It was a living being with experience, strength, and perhaps even wisdom. She realized that understanding it required patience, not forced out by the time the alien observers had started to disperse slightly. Some in disbelief and others in quiet awe, the girl had made her first small breakthrough. The beast had allowed her to remain close, to touch it, and even to walk around it. It had not attacked, nor had it displayed any hostility. She could feel the tension in its body slowly easing, as though it was beginning to trust her. The next day, she explored more of the planet, always returning to the clearing where the beast stayed. She studied its movements, learning how it walked, how it reacted to sound and touch, and how it rested. The aliens, unable to look away, watched her every action. Their initial shock had turned into fascination, though some still resisted the idea that a human could achieve this. They began to ask themselves questions that had never occurred before. Could intelligence be measured only by control? Could fear ever truly command respect? And most importantly, could a human, a creature they had long considered weak and fragile, demonstrate qualities they themselves had never mastered? One afternoon, the girl noticed the beast moving toward a rocky cliff edge. She followed slowly, careful not to startle it. The wind whipped past them, strong and cold, but she did not retreat. The creature stopped and lowered its massive body, crouching near the edge. She approached cautiously, crouching beside it. For the first time, she spoke softly, not just in tone, but in words. "You are strong. You are wise. You do not need to be feared to be respected," she whispered. The beast tilted its head, and though she could not understand its thoughts, she felt a subtle change in the air around them. The aliens, observing silently from above, were now utterly stunned. No one had ever spoken to the beast this way. No one had ever moved with such quiet confidence and patience. They could not deny it any longer. This human girl was extraordinary. As days passed, the girl and the beast began to form a bond. She learned its habits, understood its moods, and even discovered that it responded to subtle gestures, leaning forward, tilting its head, or shifting its weight. She could guide it without force, communicating in ways that were instinctive rather than verbal. The aliens watched in disbelief, and some began to feel a deep sense of respect, though they struggled to admit it aloud. It was not easy. There were moments when the beast would snort, shake its massive head, or even stomp the ground, reminding her of its immense power. Each time, she stepped back calmly, never reacting with fear or aggression. She learned to read its signals, to anticipate its movements, and to respond with patience and care. In doing so, she gained its trust slowly but steadily. The more she spent time with it, the more she understood the alien planet and its inhabitants. The aliens themselves began to change, not immediately, but subtly. They realized that their obsession with control had blinded them to other forms of intelligence and connection. They had always measured power in strength and fear, but here was proof that empathy, courage, and respect could achieve what force never could. One evening, as the planet's twin moons rose in the sky, the girl climbed onto a small boulder beside the beast and gently rested her hand on its back. It did not move. Instead, it allowed her to stay, its massive head lowering as if in acknowledgement. The aliens watched in complete silence. This was unprecedented. No human, no alien, and no creature had ever been part of such a moment before. The girl whispered to the beast again, soft words meant to convey trust and understanding. She felt a deep satisfaction, not in conquering the creature, but in forming a connection with it. She realized that this was the beginning of something far greater than herself. She was not just interacting with the beast, she was showing the aliens, and perhaps even the universe, that courage and compassion could change everything. By the time night fell again, the girl had made her presence known not as a threat, but as a friend. The beast had accepted her in its own way, and the aliens had no choice but to observe and reconsider everything they had believed. For the first time, the balance of fear and power on this planet had shifted, not through violence, but through the quiet determination of a single human girl who dared to approach the impossible. It was only the beginning. The girl knew that she had much to learn, much to prove, and much to discover. But she also knew that she had taken the first step towards something extraordinary, something that would change the planet, the aliens, and even the beast itself in ways that no one could have imagined. She had arrived in a world that did not welcome her, yet she had already begun to leave a mark that would be remembered for generations. The day she decided to ride the beast began like any other. The sky was a swirl of strange colors, green and violet, blending together as if the planet itself were alive. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, a mix of sweetness and sharp tang that made her lungs fill with energy. She approached the clearing where the ancient beast rested, its massive form outlined against the glowing moss and jagged rocks. The creature's eyes opened as soon as it sensed her presence. There was no fear in her gaze, only quiet determination. Over the days she had spent with it, she had learned to move slowly, to respect its size and power, and to communicate through subtle gestures and tone. Today, she would take a step further. Today, she would ride it. The aliens were watching from their platforms above, their eyes wide with disbelief. Some hovered silently, stunned into quiet observation. Others whispered in tones that betrayed both fear and awe. Never in their history had a human come close to the beast, let alone attempted to ride it. Their civilization had prided itself on understanding control, on dominating every aspect of life on their planet. And yet here was this human girl about to do the impossible. She approached the beast cautiously, crouching low to make herself smaller in its eyes. She reached out and placed her hand on its massive shoulder, feeling the rough, metallic texture of its scales. The creature's muscles shifted under her touch, a low rumble vibrating through the ground. She spoke softly, not in words it could understand, but in tone and intention. "I am not here to hurt you," she whispered. "I only want to ride with you, to understand you." For a long moment, the beast simply stared at her. Its glowing eyes seemed to measure her courage, her intentions, and her respect. Then, slowly, it lowered its massive body, bending its legs in a gesture that was almost an invitation. She felt her heart race, but she did not hesitate. Carefully, she climbed onto its back, keeping her balance as the ground trembled beneath its weight. The first moment was tense. The beast shifted slightly under her, testing her, making sure she could hold on. She leaned forward, letting her hands rest gently on its shoulders, and allowed herself to breathe, to move as one with it. The aliens above gasped audibly. "She cannot survive this," one of them muttered. "It is impossible." Yet she did survive, and she began to feel a strange sense of unity with the creature beneath her dot as the minutes passed. She learned to guide it through subtle movements, leaning left or right, shifting her weight, using pressure and touch rather than force. The beast responded, its massive body moving with grace despite its enormous size. She could feel the power coursing through it, the strength that had made it feared by generations. Yet it moved with her, not against her, and she began to understand the rhythm of its steps, the flow of its energy. The aliens were now completely silent, watching with a mixture of horror and awe. They had always believed that control came from domination, that fear was the only way to command respect. Yet here was a human girl, small and fragile compared to the beast, riding it not with force, but with understanding. They could see it clearly now. The human's courage, patience, and empathy were guiding the creature in a way that no power or weapon could. The girl encouraged the beast to move forward. Its massive legs lifted off the ground, each step sending tremors across the rocks. She held on tightly, but not out of fear, out of trust. She leaned with its movements, felt the flow of its muscles, and began to move as one with the creature. The ground beneath them shifted and shook, yet she felt safe. The beast was no longer just a creature to be feared. It was a partner, a living being she had begun to understand deeply. As they moved through the clearing, the aliens began to whisper among themselves. Some were panicked, insisting that the human could not possibly survive. Others were mesmerized, watching as she guided the beast with nothing but calm determination and respect. Slowly, the fear in their voices was replaced with something new: astonishment and admiration. They had never seen anything like this, and they could not deny the human's extraordinary ability to connect with life beyond her own species. The girl leaned forward slightly, feeling the wind rush past her face as the beast picked up speed. She could feel the power beneath her, each stride sending waves of energy through her body. It was exhilarating, but it was also deeply grounding. She felt alive in a way she had never experienced before, connected not only to the beast, but to the planet itself. Every movement, every breath, every step was a lesson in balance, trust, and harmony. At one point, the beast stopped near a cliff that overlooked a valley filled with glowing vegetation. She looked down at the vast expanse and felt a sense of awe. The planet was alive in ways humans could barely comprehend. The colors, the shapes, the sounds, they all felt like a symphony, a world orchestrated to challenge and inspire those who dared to explore it. She reached out, placing her hands gently on the beast's neck, feeling the rhythm of its heartbeat beneath her fingers. The aliens above were stunned silent. Their society had valued control, fear, and power above all else, yet none of those things had prepared them for this moment. They could not deny it. This human girl had achieved what no alien, no creature, and no weapon could. She had formed a bond with the most feared being on the planet, guiding it with respect and empathy rather than force. It was a new kind of power, one they had never seen or even considered possible. For hours, she rode the beast, learning its patterns, understanding its reactions, and feeling the flow of life through it. She discovered that it responded not just to touch, but to energy, to intention, to her confidence and calmness. Each movement, each stride, was a dialogue between them. She did not need words. She only needed presence, patience, and courage. The aliens began to murmur quietly among themselves. Some were angry, refusing to accept that a human could achieve such a feat. Others were thoughtful, realizing that they had underestimated humans in ways they could never have imagined. They had always believed that fear and control were the highest forms of intelligence. But here was proof that understanding, empathy, and courage could achieve far more. As the sun, or whatever passed for a sun on this planet, began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and violet, the girl guided the beast back to the clearing where they had first met. She slid gently from its back, landing softly on the ground. The beast lowered its massive head, almost as if bowing to her. She reached out and touched its scales one last time before stepping back, a smile on her face. The aliens were silent for a long moment, absorbing what they had just witnessed. Some of them began to whisper among themselves, voices tinged with awe. She actually did it," one said quietly. "She rode the beast and lived." Another added, "Not only that, she controlled it with understanding, not fear." The girl did not seek admiration. She was not there to prove herself. She was there to connect, to understand, and to show that courage and empathy could create bonds where fear and force could not. She had ridden the most feared creature on the planet, not to dominate it, but to become a part of its world for a brief moment. And in doing so, she had changed not only her own life, but also the perception of every alien who had watched Dot as night fell. She sat near the beast, looking up at the stars that moved in ways humans could never imagine. The aliens slowly departed, leaving her and the creature alone. She felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced the impossible, and in doing so, had begun to rewrite what was considered possible on this strange planet. The day had been long, exhausting, and exhilarating. Yet in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. There was more to learn, more to explore, and more to understand. She had ridden the beast, earned its trust, and changed the perspective of an entire civilization. And tomorrow she would continue, taking another step further into the extraordinary world she had found herself in. For the first time, she realized that the planet, the beast, And the aliens were not obstacles to overcome. They were teachers, guides, and witnesses. And she was ready to embrace everything they had to offer, one step, one stride, one courageous moment at a time. The morning light spread slowly across the alien landscape, casting a soft glow over jagged rocks and the glowing moss that had become familiar to the girl. She had spent the night near the ancient beast, learning to read its breathing, its subtle movements, and the small signs that showed what it was feeling. By now, she understood that it was not just a creature of raw power. It was intelligent, patient, and even cautious, like her in some ways. The bond they had formed was quiet but undeniable, built on trust, respect, and courage. The aliens were watching from above again, though this time their expressions were different. Some were still in disbelief, unsure how a human could survive such a close relationship with the beast. Others, however, were beginning to change. They were seeing something they had never seen before, a human not acting out of fear, not using force, but guiding a being of immense power through understanding and empathy. It was foreign to their way of thinking, and yet it worked. A group of the aliens gathered near a floating platform, observing her quietly. They whispered in clicks and tones, trying to analyze her behavior. "She is not aggressive," one said. "She does not threaten it, yet it follows her lead." Another replied, "This is not control through force. It is understanding. This is not how we operate. We must rethink everything we know." The girl, unaware of the discussion above, focused on the beast. She noticed subtle changes in its behavior. It moved more freely, relaxed in ways it hadn't before, and even allowed her to place her hands on parts of its body she had not dared to touch previously. The creature's massive tail swished gently, a sign of comfort, and it nudged her lightly with its head, inviting her to climb onto it again. She smiled softly, knowing that today they would explore more than just the clearing. They would test the bond they had been building. She climbed onto the beast's back, careful and deliberate. Each movement was measured, a conversation of balance and trust. The beast responded immediately, lifting its massive legs with grace, despite its immense size. The girl leaned slightly, guiding it through movements without words. They moved together, a single unit, and she could feel the strength and power flowing beneath her dot above them. The aliens could hardly believe their eyes. "It allows her to ride freely," one said. "She moves with it, not against it." "How is this possible?" Another whispered, "Perhaps humans have a quality we cannot measure: courage without arrogance, strength without aggression." The girl steered the beast through the rocky terrain, observing the land from its massive back. She noticed things she had missed before: the way the plants swayed, the subtle changes in the air, the small creatures that had learned to avoid the beast, but now watched her with cautious curiosity. She realized that this planet was not just a place of danger and fear. It was a world alive with life, waiting for someone to understand it in ways the aliens themselves had overlooked. Dot, as they moved, she began to notice the reactions of the aliens more closely. Some hovered silently, their expressions shifting from shock to curiosity. Others were tense, unwilling to accept what they were seeing, but unable to look away. It was clear that her actions were causing a ripple effect, not just with the beast, but with the alien society itself. They had always measured power through dominance and fear. But here was proof that another kind of power existed, the power to inspire, to guide, and to connect without force. The girl guided the beast to a narrow valley filled with shimmering crystal formations. The rocks reflected light in dazzling patterns, and the alien landscape seemed almost magical. She gently encouraged the beast to move carefully through the terrain, using subtle pressure and gestures to guide its steps. It responded instantly, slowing when she needed, shifting when she leaned, and stopping when she held her weight in balance. The aliens were captivated. It listens to her, one said softly. It obeys without fear. It trusts her. Another added, she has found a way to communicate that we cannot replicate. This is remarkable. She is teaching us without even speaking. The girl leaned forward slightly, resting her hands lightly on the beast's neck. She felt the rhythm of its heartbeat and the energy that pulsed through its muscles. For the first time, she realized that this was more than just riding. It was understanding life itself in a way that no training or control could teach. She whispered softly, not expecting an answer, but knowing that the tone and intention carried meaning. The beast responded subtly, moving with her guidance, lowering its head slightly in acknowledgement. As the day went on, she and the beast explored further. They crossed small streams that glowed faintly, climbed over rocks that seemed too dangerous for a creature of such size, and navigated dense vegetation that moved with an almost sentient awareness. With every step, she learned more about the creature, and it learned to trust her more. The connection they had built was no longer fragile. It was a partnership. The aliens' reactions continued to evolve. Some were quietly fascinated, seeing possibilities they had never considered. Others were conflicted, struggling to reconcile their beliefs with what they were witnessing. One elder alien, known for being strict and unyielding, hovered silently, studying the human girl. Slowly, it began to see that the human's approach patient, courageous and respectful was a form of intelligence far beyond what they had, measured in their society. Girl and the beast eventually returned to the clearing as the sun or whatever the planet called its sun began to set. The colors of the sky shifted dramatically, painting the landscape in shades of red, purple, and gold. She slid off the beast's back, landing softly, and approached it calmly. The creature lowered its massive head, nudging her gently as if to show gratitude. She smiled and placed her hand on its scales, feeling the warmth and strength beneath her fingers. Above them, the aliens continued to observe in silence. Some had tears, an unusual sight for beings who rarely expressed emotion. They had watched power and fear dominate their world for centuries. But here was a living demonstration that courage, empathy, and understanding could achieve far more than intimidation or aggression ever could. They were beginning to rethink their entire perspective. The girl spoke softly to the beast, words meant to convey trust and respect. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she also knew that the bond she had created was strong enough to withstand challenges. For the first time, she felt a sense of true partnership, not just with the creature, but with the planet itself. She had discovered a language of life that transcended words, species, and fear. Night fell, and the stars above the alien world shimmered in strange patterns. The girl sat near the beast, observing the quiet movement of life around her. She realized that she had changed the planet in ways no one else could. The aliens had witnessed a human doing what they had believed impossible, and the shift in their thinking was already underway. Fear and control were no longer the only measures of strength. She reflected on the days she had spent with the beast. Every moment had been a lesson in patience, empathy, and courage. She had learned to move with the creature, to understand its signals, and to respect its power. In return, the beast had allowed her to guide it, to ride it, and to become a part of its world. This mutual understanding was rare, even among humans, and she realized how extraordinary it truly was. The aliens had begun to see the value of what she had achieved. Some were inspired, thinking about ways to approach their own world with less fear and more understanding. Others were cautious but curious, realizing that they had been blind to possibilities outside their rigid rules. Slowly, quietly, the human girl had become a teacher not through words or force, but through courage, respect, and example. By the end of the night, the girl and the beast rested together in the clearing. She could feel the energy of the planet, the power of the creature, and the subtle presence of the aliens above. It was a moment of peace, reflection, and anticipation. She knew that the next day would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities to deepen the bond she had formed. The alien society, once rigid and unyielding, was beginning to shift. They had witnessed something that no calculation, rule, or history could explain. A human had achieved the impossible, showing them a new way to connect, to lead, and to live. Their perception of life, power, and courage was slowly transforming, and there was no turning back. As she drifted to sleep near the massive creature, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment and purpose. She had not conquered the beast, nor had she sought to dominate it. She had simply approached with respect, understanding, and courage. And in doing so, she had begun to change an entire civilization. Tomorrow would be another day of discovery, and she was ready. She had learned that true strength did not lie in fear or aggression, but in connection, empathy, and the courage to face the unknown with an open heart. The journey was far from over, but she had already made history, not just for herself, but for the beast, for the aliens, and for the planet itself. The next morning, the planet seemed quieter than usual. The usual hum of alien machines and the distant calls of strange creatures were there, but they felt softer, almost respectful, as if the world itself was waiting. The girl stood near the ancient beast, her hand resting gently on its scales. Over the past days, she had grown to understand not only the creature's power, but its temperament, its intelligence, and its subtle moods. The bond they shared had deepened into something rare, a trust that transcended species. Fear and even words, the beast shifted its massive body, nudging her slightly with its head, as if asking what the day held. She smiled and spoke softly, her tone calm and reassuring. Today, we show them what is possible, not with force, but with understanding. She had come to know that the aliens were still watching, still judging, still learning from every step she took. She was aware of their presence, their disbelief, and their growing respect. And she hoped that her actions would leave a lasting impression. As she climbed onto the beast's back, she felt a surge of energy, unlike anything she had experienced before. The ground trembled slightly under the beast's weight, but she was steady. She moved with it, as one body, one mind, one presence. Every step, every movement, was a conversation without words, a silent acknowledgement of their connection. She could feel the intelligence in the beast's eyes, a recognition that she was not just a rider, but a partner, someone worthy of trust and respect. The aliens above were silent this time, their voices muted by awe. They had watched the human girl ride the ancient beast before, but today was different. Today, she would demonstrate something far more profound than bravery or skill. Today, she would show them a new way of thinking, a way that combined courage, empathy, and wisdom. Some of the aliens began to whisper among themselves, struggling to put their feelings into words. "She is extraordinary," one said quietly. "She has shown us a new kind of power." The girl guided the beast through the rocky terrain toward the heart of the valley, a place where even the aliens rarely ventured. The air was thick with the scent of glowing plants, and the ground shimmered with faint, phosphorescent patterns. She leaned forward slightly, signaling the beast to move carefully, and felt the rhythm of its stride beneath her. Each movement was deliberate, controlled not by fear, but by mutual understanding. The beast responded instantly, adjusting its pace and direction as if it had always known her thoughts. As they reached the center of the valley, the girl stopped and let the beast kneel, lowering itself to the ground. She slid gently off its back, landing softly on the glowing terrain. The aliens above were completely silent. They had never seen such a display of courage, patience, and intelligence. The human had not only survived the beast's immense power, but had also guided it, respected it, and formed a bond that defied every expectation. She stood before the creature, looking into its glowing eyes. "You are magnificent," she whispered. "But you are not meant to be feared. You are meant to be understood." The beast lowered its head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, as if it understood every word she said. It nudged her gently, and she reached out, placing her hand on its massive snout. The connection was tangible, a silent language of trust and mutual respect. The aliens observed quietly, and for the first time, they began to question their entire approach to life. Their civilization had always measured strength through fear and control, believing that domination was the highest form of intelligence. Yet here was a human who had achieved what they could not with understanding, empathy, and courage. Some of them began to feel admiration, a strange and unfamiliar emotion that crept into their minds. Others were still conflicted, struggling to reconcile their beliefs with what they had witnessed. One of the elder aliens, known for strict rules and unwavering control, hovered closer to the clearing. It studied the girl and the beast with careful eyes. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it nodded. "Perhaps we have misunderstood strength," it said quietly. "Perhaps intelligence is not just measured by fear or dominance, but by connection and understanding." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of generations of belief. The girl smiled faintly, not because she sought recognition, but because she understood the impact of her actions. For the rest of the day, she worked with the beast, showing the aliens how to guide it without force, how to communicate through subtle gestures and respect rather than fear. She allowed them to observe, but never interfered. Her goal was not to teach through words, but to demonstrate through action. Slowly, the aliens began to grasp the lesson. Power did not need to be cruel. Control did not need to be harsh, and fear was not the only path to respect God as the twin moons rose in the sky, casting a soft, shimmering light over the valley. The girl and the beast rested together. She leaned against its massive side, feeling the steady rhythm of its breathing, and reflected on the days she had spent on this planet. She realized that she had done more than form a bond with a creature. They had both transformed each other. The beast had learned trust, patience, and understanding, while she had learned courage, empathy, and the quiet strength that comes from connection down above. The aliens remained silent, absorbing what they had witnessed. Their society, once rigid and unyielding, was beginning to change. Some whispered about new ways to approach life, about respecting creatures instead of fearing them. Others remained cautious but thoughtful, realizing that they had underestimated the power of empathy and courage. Slowly, they began to understand that strength was not just physical or technological, it was emotional, intellectual, and moral. As the night deepened, the girl knew it was almost time to leave. She had come to this planet unexpectedly, through circumstances she could not fully explain, but her purpose had become clear. She had shown the aliens that humans were capable of extraordinary things, not through violence, not through fear, but through understanding and courage. She had formed a bond with the most feared creature on the planet, changed the perception of an entire civilization, and left a lasting impression that would endure for generations. She whispered to the beast one last time, "Our time here is ending, but you have shown me more than I could have imagined. Thank you for trusting me." The creature nudged her gently, then turned its massive head toward the valley, watching as if to ensure she was safe. She smiled and climbed onto a small rock, taking one last look at the landscape that had become so familiar. The aliens approached cautiously, a mixture of reverence and curiosity in their movements. The elder alien stepped forward. "You have changed us," it said simply. "Not through words, not through force, but through your courage, patience, and respect. We will not forget this." The girl nodded, understanding the depth of the words. She had come as a visitor, but she was leaving as a teacher, not by commanding, but by showing what was possible when fear was replaced with understanding. As she stepped toward the portal that had brought her to the planet, the beast watched silently. She reached out one last time, touching its scales gently. A bond had been formed, one that transcended space, species, and even words. She knew that wherever she went next, she would carry the lessons of courage, empathy, and trust with her. And the planet, the beast, and the aliens would carry the memory of her presence. A human who dared to face the impossible, and, in doing so, transformed everything. With a deep breath, she stepped through the portal, leaving the alien world behind. The twin moons glimmered overhead, and the valley was quiet once more, but nothing would ever be the same. The aliens had witnessed a new kind of power, one that relied not on fear or control, but on understanding, patience, and courage. The ancient beast, once feared by generations, had been shown that trust and respect were stronger than fear. The girl's journey had ended, but her impact would last forever. Stories would be told of the human who rode the ancient beast, of the courage and empathy that changed an entire civilization, and of the lessons that would shape the planet for generations to come. She had come alone, but she left a legacy, a reminder that bravery was not measured by strength alone, that true intelligence included heart and understanding, and that even the smallest being could achieve the extraordinary. As she returned to the world she had left behind, she carried with her a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had faced the impossible, connected with a creature no one else dared approach, and shown a civilization that life could be guided not by fear, but by understanding. Her story would remain a legend, a beacon of hope and courage for those who believed that even the impossible could be achieved through trust, empathy, and fearless determination. The alien planet, once defined by fear and control, was now a place of wonder, respect, and possibility. And the girl, blonde and human, had left her mark in a way that no one would ever forget.